Hello, my name's Philippa Waller.
My name is Penelope Waller, and we are two of the directors at 4D Human Being.
And welcome to the 4D Human Being podcast. What's it all about, Pen?
It's all about your personal and professional relationships. It's about your communication skills, how you lead, how you work and build teams, how you are looking after yourself and your well-being, and how you are much more at choice. What do we mean by that?
Well, sometimes we can get a little caught in patterns in life and we can all be a little bit on our automatic pilot. So 4D Human Being is all about helping us get back to choice and being a four-dimensional human being. And your fourth dimension, of course,
is intention. So whether it's about your impact, your leadership style, your team dynamics, whether it's about your well-being, whether it's about your communication or your presentation skills, anything that involves human beings interacting with other human beings, 4D Human Being are here to help.
we're going to take a deep dive and look at some tools, insights, theories that are going to help you go from a 3D human doing to a 4D human being so that you can happen to the world rather than the world simply happening to you. Hello and welcome.
We're in Scotland.
We're on the Isle of Arran. We'll be mainly doing Scottish accents throughout. So that's
You've been doing a lot of Scottish accents.
something to look forward to. Well,
It's very good though, Phil. I mean, I do think, although we have identical DNA, I think you might have Scottish hereditary. What's the word?
heritage. Easy for you to say. Not.
My Scottish accent suggests that I haven't.
It's difficult to say the word Bern,
Oh,
Bayer,
yes.
a fell, a dell,
A glen.
a glen without a Scottish
A
accent, is it?
strath.
A strath. Yes.
We've got a whole new Scottish geography and vocabulary.
Exactly. It's been important as we're shimmying down the fell. So
There'll be a quiz at the end.
there'll be a quiz
on
at the end.
Scottish geography.
Exactly. I'm not sure I've got a super segue there. I suppose adaptability to the weather.
Well, we've certainly had to adapt to the weather.
Yeah.
It's been changeable, Phil.
So changeable.
It's madness.
It reminds me of being in Auckland, strangely.
Four seasons in one day.
As the song goes, crowded house, 10 points.
I mean, we like talking about the
Four
weather.
seasons in one day.
We like talking about the weather in Surrey, and we think the weather is changeable. But this is a whole other level.
This is bright blue skies to cutting horizontal
Within 10 minutes.
rain to hail. I love it.
In fact, I did say...
Never a dull moment.
I
Pam.
did say, didn't I, on one of the...
Who needs Netflix? You've got the weather.
Exactly. I did say on one of the hillocks we climbed...
Across the tussocks.
I did say, as the sun was shining...
We are here with the dogs.
Hopefully that's not the Loch Ness Monster living in the lake. As we were on a hillock in the sunshine, thinking it was all jolly and dandy, which it was actually.
Yeah.
But then I said to you, of course the weather could turn at any minute and we could be two twins found days later stranded in a hailstorm
Yes.
on a hill. You just don't know.
Yes. What were they thinking?
Yeah, but we got lucky.
Fell on a fell.
We made...
Yeah. Is the headline. Right. And other headlines we never want to see.
Oh, we love Scotland though.
So, this is part 4 of Leading Through Change.
Yes.
And this is probably the foundational kind of core philosophy. So I can certainly speak for myself, for my life. It was probably the part that created the most possibility through change.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because we're talking about the words adaptability and flexibility, and at the same time, they've created more solidity in my life than anything else.
It's so true.
It's got a real paradox in it.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things we're going to talk to is the difference between rigidity and flexibility through change. That we somehow think it's going to feel better and more control.
So we can lock it down.
We can lock it down. And of course, it's so much more insecure because if you think about trying to hold a pot on a boiling lid, the effort required to keep that in place rather than letting the lid off and letting the steam rise.
Yes. And this, I would differentiate.
If
this.
that's a good,
You could take it off and put it back on again. It's like when you're braking on an icy road. Of course, what you want to do is you want to lock it down as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Of course, you're absolutely told not to do that. It's the most risky thing to do. Yeah, you got to pump the brake. I guess I would differentiate this episode from the others in as much as we've looked at kind of resilience through change. We've looked at edge behaviours through change, and also the switch model in terms of what really motivates us through change. So we've really looked at what kind of happens to the body, how we can be more resilient. We've looked at the behaviours that happen through change, and also what genuinely motivates us when we're leading ourselves and others through change. This episode is really the practical stuff that you can do day to day to help yourself and others move through change in the most possible and positive way.
Yes. And so probably the thing maybe...
It's the creative part.
Yes, it's the creative response.
Yeah.
And so probably the thing to say right up front is all of what's gone, certainly in episode 3, around edge, is to really recognise the difference between the right response to change and your rehearsed response to change, your learnt response. And so what we're really playing with here are practical ways to shift and be much more flexible, much more, it always makes me feel like lighter in the face of change.
I think of a little sort of leprechaun dancing on its toes.
Yeah, like, exactly, what's possible, rather than digging your heels in and getting stuck. So I think let's go through the practical pieces and fairly, not quickly, but fairly sort of briefly give the practical application. Yeah. Because we've got a lot. So number 1, the yes and mindset. Say no more. So this is, we talk about this a lot. If I think back to, by the way, this is probably one of the podcasts to do a shout out to my TEDx talk, because it really is in that, it's all about this, even in the face of really tough stuff.
And just before you dive into it, a couple of the sort of contrary and often less helpful response patterns that we can see through change is either blocking because you don't want the change, so you're going to find all the problems with it, all the reasons why nothing should change. The second response pattern that we can often see is a controlling response pattern, where we have an idea as to what can change, what needs to change, what we want to do, and we've got that kind of fixed in our mind. Absolutely. So those can be, I'm not saying those are always the responses, but we would call those the sort of contrary responses to the improviser mindset, the adaptability, the flexibility. And the blocking, I suppose there's a very, very rare instances where that might be helpful. I don't know.
Definitely.
Possibly risk aversion, maybe.
Definitely. If you're a safety checker on an oil rig, and someone goes to, pick up a loose cable or chain, and
so let's change the way we do things around.
Yeah, you go, let's stop that. So there's definitely a place for it.
And also the controlling piece, I guess we would sometimes, although not always, give the example of, let's say, the military, where one person just has to be in charge. They have to decide what the initiative's going to be, and they'll move forward. Although that said, I think there's often adaptability.
There's always flexibility within a system, though, at different sort of sections of a system.
But I would say watch out for those two responses. Yeah. Sometimes they can be helpful. I would offer that they can be our default and less helpful.
Yeah, and we're going to come to something around the difference between destination and route as well. So the first thing is the yes and mindset. And I think the word mindset is probably the most important thing here, that it's not about just saying yes and. It really is the difference between hearing new ideas, hearing, change initiatives or problems coming up in a meeting, or thoughts about how we might do things differently or change processes. And it's the difference between the absolute default mode of why that's not going to work. Bearing in mind, we've talked about this a lot. You've been highly rewarded at school and through your career for seeing the problem. Yeah. And I've talked to a number of people recently in coaching sessions about notice what happens in the body. Notice the impulse to come forward and say, oh, hold on a minute, but, and to almost interrupt or to say yes, but. And if you can catch it in the body, it's a great place to catch it, because if you can sit back, even, a centimetre, 2 centimetres, get back in your chair, breathe, and almost tell yourself, all I'm going to do is open up some space here. If you can give yourself anything from 30 seconds to 24 hours before you respond,
you're probably going to avoid the full block.
Can I ask you?
Because it's space, isn't it?
Well, can I ask
initially,
you, when you were doing lots of improvisation on stage, which you did a lot all over the world, there must have been moments where you were on stage and the scene's going really well and then somebody says something. There must be a moment in your body where you're thinking, no, that's rubbish.
I've got a really good one. It was a new improviser. I don't think she ended up working with us. And I think she was just in so much, two things were happening. One, she was in panic. And two, what happens with improvisers is when they're early on, when they're training, going to come back to training in a minute because it's a muscle, not a gift always. Because she was quite new to it, what can happen is you don't trust your obvious. You feel you've got to be super creative.
Yeah, super clever.
Yeah. So what happened was there was a whole story in a scene. It was a long form format. So there was lots of scenes building up to one story, telling one story. And
was it in front of an audience?
Yes, it was in front of an audience.
There were some stakes.
So higher stakes.
Yeah.
And there was a family will. And so, the stakes were, raised and raised and raised. Yeah, I really remember it because I'd set up the moment where I said, go and look in the drawer.
Okay.
Go and see what you can find. Now, everyone on that stage, I thought, knew that had to be probably the will, if not a note or a gun or, something that was about this story.
To crack it open.
Exactly. Go and look in and I might have even said, go and look in the drawer and read what's in there or something like that. And she went over there and I said, and she held it out and she said, what this? Now that's another classic. They want you to name it.
Yes.
And I thought, it's so clear, isn't it? This is my big mistake. And I said, tell me what you're holding in your hand, sort of thing. And she said, it's a pair of nylon stockings. And of course, my body went, what, it didn't, but I can recognize that there must have been a part of me thinking, no.
Yes.
I'm so trained by that point where my mind actually goes is, how do I make nylon stockings work here? But it was that moment of,
wrong.
Like everything has led up here and everyone else knows. Now we've got to somehow make that work. But that,
what did you do out of it? Can you remember?
Oh yes, I made that. I made it about the mother and the nylon stockings, and it was a message. You just have to work very, very hard.
But your sort of that nanosecond instinct was, you should have.
Yeah, the nanosecond was, come on, we all knew,
which is where the autopilot goes.
Yes. Now, that was an extreme example where that was hard work.
Yeah.
Where what often happens, of course, let's say it was a more experienced improviser, they might have said something like, it's a box.
Yeah.
And we can work with that. It's not quite what I expected.
Yes.
But we'll have a less extreme version of, yes, and you know what box that is, don't you?
Yeah.
And we'll make it work together. And this is the point about improv. It is not a gift. We trained week on week on week to build the muscle that doesn't say, no, it's not a pair of nylon stockings, it's a will.
Yes.
We build the muscle to say, okay, how do I make that work?
Yeah.
You've thrown in a massive change curveball here, not what I was expecting. So if we apply that to a real life situation, the training week on week on week, which you can do within your team, you can literally do this training, and we're going to give you some tips on that, means that when you have the meeting that says, our revenue is halved.
Or the agenda suddenly changes.
The agenda changes, or the supply chain is cut. You're not stuck in, no, that can't happen. That's not in the plan.
Yeah.
You're not even thinking about it. Your muscle is so trained to, right, what are we doing from here? What's going to work from here? How can we make this work? Who needs what? How do we still keep on target to our destination with the fact that the route has just completely changed?
Yeah, and I do wonder if, let's say, for example, that the agenda suddenly changes at the beginning of a meeting, not what you're expecting.
Yeah, I've got my 20-minute presentation.
Yes, and I think the brain probably does go to the first one, which is, this isn't fair. So if you feel you can, because of the hierarchy or non-hierarchy, if you feel you can say, no, this is not what we agreed, then we've gone into the blocking. Not necessarily good or bad, but that's where we've gone. Or the second one, which I think is more likely where we go, is, okay, now I've got to absolutely scramble to get this under control as quickly as humanly possible.
Yes, and actually, I think one of the other difficult errors there is, I've got to scramble to get this under control as quickly as possible and get it back to where it should have been.
That's exactly right. As close as possible.
As close as possible to where I thought this was going.
Exactly right.
And that's the thing about control, is we're constantly trying to pin it down to the idea that we originally had or we have in our head, rather than, this is taking a new, if you imagine it's a pathway to a destination and it's suddenly gone a sharp left into a secret garden, and you're like, how do we get back onto the tarmac?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, the improviser mindset is, okay, this might take a little longer.
Yeah. I might do something different.
Yeah. What's possible in here?
Yeah.
What have I not ever seen or heard of that's in here?
Yeah.
So that's the improviser mindset. So it really, and it moves perfectly onto our...
It can feel a bit frightening, though, because of course it's something that you don't know.
100%. This is, we once ran a process, didn't we? I ran it years and years ago, where we had qualities of an improviser and qualities of a stand-up comedian.
Yes.
And within a team, you had to go and sort of stand where you felt was more you. And of course, the thing about a stand-up comedian, not all stand-up comedians, but more often, it's scripted, it's tight. Stand-up comedians talk about, a tight 20. That's your tight 20-minute material. It's super scripted. If you go and see that show twice, all the parts that looked really improvised are absolutely scripted. Yeah. And other than the odd heckle, that is fixed.
Yeah.
Whereas, and that's your security. Now, comedians get better and better at dealing with hecklers, and that makes them feel even more safe.
Some actually have.
And some have an improviser skill.
Yeah.
The improviser's security never comes from a script. The improviser's security, a little bit like the integrative therapist's security, comes from knowing that you can deal with the unknown.
Yeah.
And
that is...
I mean, that for me is like gold. That's like nothing else. Because if you've got a script, great.
Yeah.
Like we've got a script. But to walk into a room, to stand in front of an audience and to absolutely know that whatever happens, if those lights go out, if someone shouts at you, that you can work with that and make it into something. It's the most secure, confident feeling you can ever have.
We saw a couple of stand-up comedians recently, didn't we, Phil, where there was a support act, and he wasn't very experienced. He was all right. He was pretty good. The main guy, he was great. And one of the big differences, because both of them did have a slightly interactive format with the audience. And of course, I remember you turning to me during the warm-up act and just saying, but there was such an obvious pickup there. There was such an obvious integration of something that had happened before. Yeah. And of course, he hadn't trained himself enough to feel confident enough to take what he was getting. So he was a little bit more trying to stay on his script.
Yes.
Whereas the main performer
was just working with the flow.
With whatever came up.
Absolutely.
And was actually quite comfortable to stretch it out for quite a long time without any laughs, because he knew he could find a way to build it up to something.
And that, you've just spoken to something really, really important here, that all the time that we're in control or block or panic, and this has come up a lot with clients recently, you're probably your speedometer is probably running high, because that mode of being is running hard to keep in control. Yeah. And so
get things back on track
and know what's happening. So one of the first things to do that you have to learn as an improviser, two big things. One is you have to open up the space. You have to open up the possibility. And in rehearsals, that means it's a bit clunky because you're kind of trying to work things out a bit more. But you have to take a moment, take a beat. And that's a really good message for meetings.
Yes.
Yeah. And the second thing is that you have to really, really be present and listen, because your absolute security is standing right in front of you.
Yes.
It's right in the moment.
There's the bridge is there.
Exactly. That's where the bridge is. And it's it's weird when you're not used to it.
Because you think you should own the bridge, but someone else is going to give you something that has to become the bridge.
But that problem that's just come in, we've got to take whatever cut on our resources, or that deadline is never going to happen. That's your opportunity. That's the bridge. And with an improviser mindset, your yes and becomes, okay, we've got a month's delay on the deadline. What else is possible in that month?
Yeah.
That means by the time we get to the destination, our product is gilded in gold, because we've got more, what else is possible? So you're always thinking like that. So you're listening. If we've got less resource, what does that mean? Like, who gets to upskill because there's less people to, whatever it is, you're looking for the opportunities.
And I love that you talked about training earlier, which I'm sure we'll talk about throughout, because I can often feel that some people think, well, you either have this gift or you don't. It's who you are. And I just don't think that's true.
No, it's not true. And in fact, what's really interesting, remembering this, I think I've talked about this before, when I was offered improv classes after I graduated from drama school, and I've talked about this, there were two options, a play reading group and an improv group. And of course, no one wanted to do the improv group, And what's interesting about that, and then there were no places left on the playwriting or play reading. And what's interesting about that is, even as actors, we were all even blocking the idea of going into an experience where we wouldn't have a script. Yeah. So even before the training, we were already blocking that experience. That's how unnerving it is. Yeah. And of course, thank goodness that the other class was full, because that training was absolutely game changing.
So yes and is one of the cornerstones.
So yes and is the cornerstone, is just sit back, take a breath, give it some space and ask, okay, and what's possible off the back of that? That really speaks to rigidity versus resilience. You can really notice it in your body. Yeah. You can notice the contraction and the tension and people don't breathe. They stop breathing. Yeah. And that rigidity that's saying, no, stop. Actually, you can work with the body.
You watch your gestures as well. I mean,
watch your gestures, getting tight.
We talk about if your palms are down or your arms are folded.
Absolutely.
All of those things are basically saying we're putting back, we're retreating.
Exactly.
Palms open, broader gesture.
Yeah. Soften your shoulders. The body's now saying, I think we're okay. I mean, you can do so much with the body. Yeah. And that's another thing that definitely happens in improvisation training is, you've got the adrenaline when you're walking on for the first time on the stage, but you're not in that state all the time. You're absolutely in it. You're so in it that you're not worried about what might happen. Yes. You're just in it. I can't describe it in any other way. You're responding.
What I love about great improvisation shows, and many of yours, which I came to watch, is, I mean, obviously you're performing, you're acting, but nevertheless, it's the enthusiasm with which you grab the offer from the audience. I mean, it could be absolutely
bag of chips.
Yeah, rubbish. Yeah. And you go, brilliant, bag of chips, and you grab it. And I often use that expression in coaching, which is, what's the gift? What's the gift? Yeah. Take the gift. Yeah. And it doesn't always feel like it's a gift, but that's the other piece of the training is the enthusiasm with which you respond to it. I love it.
Absolutely. That actually there's nothing more wonderful than, you're doing a Shakespeare scene and then, you pull out the dagger and say, tomorrow the king must die. And the other person doesn't say, oh, but shall we wait till Tuesday? They say yes. And they pull out their dagger and say, 2 daggers, one to the back and one to the front will teach him the lesson that he must, and you're just like, yay! Now we're cooking.
Well, the other thing about this as well, just to bear in mind, is of course it runs through improv, is it makes the other person look good as well. So if you imagine you're in a meeting and somebody says, this has been a bit derailed, we need to change the agenda. Of course, the people that either try and get things back on track or say, well, you didn't tell us, and they're not only blocking, but they're making the other person either look or feel bad. And nobody wants that.
And nobody wins.
Nobody wins. Whereas great improvisers will be like, you're amazing and I'm amazing.
And actually, one of our points is to really normalise and celebrate change in the micro moment. So when someone says, I'm sorry, I've got to report, there's no way we're going to make that deadline, Bob. And Bob gets praise this time, Pam, because Bob usually gets the crap. Thank you so much for giving us advance warning on that and letting us know. That means we can that you really say yes to it. Okay, great. What do we know? Yeah. What does that tell us? So exactly that. We'll come to that, but there are really basic practices that you can incorporate into your meetings. That's the training.
A quick word from us at 4D Human Being. If you're enjoying the show, please do click follow so that you can have the 4D Human Being podcast instantly in your feed. And we'd love it if you liked and reviewed us. Let us know what you think.
Please do think of 1 or 2 people that you could share the 4D Human Being podcast with. Somebody who would really benefit from the content you're listening to right now.
Back to the show.
Reframing failure as feedback. I mean, this is an absolute classic. So I'm going to say that again. Reframing failure as feedback. I mean, this is absolutely one of the key parts of improviser training. That muscle is that when you're in rehearsal, that is what you're doing. And here's the thing about it.
But when you fail.
Yeah, exactly that. The when it doesn't work, you're all in that going, what happened there? Why didn't that, what would have been? And
so the rest of the cast doesn't go, Phil,
that was rubbish. You're so rubbish. You'd probably keep going. You might keep going for a bit and then
unpick it.
And well, you might keep going with the scene and then it's becoming very effortful and you've gone so off track or you're not in alignment with each other. And then you'd probably complete it. And then you'd unpick it. Yeah. You'd unpick why.
But not like
that
one person.
No, you'd just be so curious. And in fact, there's
what didn't work there,
Yeah, what happened there? Or not even what didn't work, but what happened there? What could have happened? And there's even a game that's so brilliant, and you don't play this with new people because it's quite brutal, but it's brilliant, is you have
brutal but brilliant.
Brutal but brilliant. You have a game called Continue or Thank You. And this is the best feedback game where you have to get up one by one and do a solo scene. And you get 30 seconds. And then you go to your audience or your teammates and you say, continue or thank you. And they say, if they're really enjoying it and they're engaged, they say continue. And if they're bored, they say thank you. And the feedback is, and this is great for storytelling and presentations, what is it that person does who keeps getting told continue? And so you're literally getting feedback in real time of what is engaging an audience. And observing. And if you come at it from a game, continue or thank you, it's absolutely brilliant because you're learning for yourself and you're also watching other people. What is it that they're doing? Storytelling wise in a solo improv scene that means people keep saying, and it's the most extraordinary learning.
I mean, one of the areas I see this, Phil, is on Would I Lie to You, the panel show. And there's a particular comedian in the UK called Bob Mortimer. And I saw a clip of him the other day on this show. And you have to make up stories and they might be true, they might be lies. And he was talking about the fact that he'd replaced one of the back seats of his car and installed a toilet. And it was sort of funny, but not funny. But he kept going and everybody was just like open-mouthed on every word he was saying because you couldn't believe he was saying it and you couldn't believe where it was going to go. And it wasn't even about being quippy and funny, but there was something about him that you think, I could listen to you talk about this toilet in the backseat of a car for another half an hour. And it's I can't exactly pinpoint what it was, but as you say, you have to really observe it to work out what he's doing.
And it's usually about engagement and promising. So it's usually about how engaged you are. So if you think about a speaker in a presentation, if you're not interested in it, they're not going to be. So if you're interested in it, number one, and the second one is you keep setting up promises. At the end of 30 seconds, you want a promise. So at the end of 30 seconds, we have to know why. Why was there a toilet in the backseat? The second 30 seconds might be, who used it? But you're constantly setting up questions.
Well, I think this is what he did. So he said something like, he was talking about the toilet. Everyone was sort of like, this can't be used. And then eventually he said, well, because it's really useful, he said, because obviously when you're on long journeys between gigs, you don't want to stop.
So now your question is, who's driving?
How do you not stop?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good example. Exactly that. So now you've got questions of, is there a curtain around it? Is it exposed?
How long is your arm?
Exactly. What does the driver do?
That is his genius.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
So your
promise.
Questions.
That's really good.
Phil. Very good. Anyway, so we're slightly off track. So reframing failure as feedback. If you can create that in your team, that is gold. Absolutely gold. And again, anything that you can gamify. So if you can do anything like the kind of continue or thank you, or the quickest person to give the one piece of feedback that's going to change the game in this meeting. If you can gamify it, it really helps people in terms of the mindset that they're in.
And is it worth saying, because in the example you've given, that is a collective feedback. Yes. Probably that's a really nice way to go. What have we learned?
Definitely a nice way to start, isn't it? Because it's much less threatening. Yeah. Exactly. We don't want to be picked out from the tribe as being the one.
You failed, here's your feedback.
Yeah, here's your feedback, exactly. But only you, Bob. Right. Comfort zone trap. Love this. So the idea that we can become more flexible through change and still feel as comfortable as we are in no change. Madness, exactly. Yeah. Absolute madness. So That's why what you just said is, how do you start at the foothills of the Alp and not send people up to the top, with nothing but a sausage roll and although, but it's got to be tolerable for people. If you're sending people so far out of their comfort zone that it's panic.
So step at a time.
What exactly, change the kitchenette, change the agenda on the meeting, get people used to the idea of flexing through change. Practice on something that's lower stakes, because what you're training your body to do, really, at the end of the day, what improviser training is doing is it's training your nervous system to not panic when you're thrown something unexpected. That really is all it is, really.
I
mean, yes, you need the creative responses, but that really is about your own resources, how much you read and watch, and the links you've got in your brain. And that's another piece. That's your own creativity. But really, the training is, can I stay completely calm and present in change?
If I was to bring this into the context of work, and I've had conversations about this very recently, of course, it's happening all the time now, where curveballs are coming in, agendas are being changed, big problems are arising. And what the response does tend to be for those, and we'll all have different experiences in terms of our nervous system, in terms of how overstimulated or overwhelmed they get by those changes. We will tend to either slightly ignore the body or just accept that that's how we feel. And then we'll go on to the next meeting and there'll probably be something difficult in there. And I hear so often how we don't take a few seconds even to take care of the nervous system.
Yeah.
So we're in constant overwhelm, and B, we kind of never regulate around the change. So we always fear it.
Yeah. So if you imagine as a leader or a manager of a team, naming something that's happening or that's new, that's changed, that's a problem, taking a breath and then checking in with the team. Let me check what's come up for you. Let's take 20, 30 seconds just to notice how that impacted you and what that feels like. You don't have to go around the room, but if you've named it, you've normalized it. And that means now everyone around the room, some people will be like, nothing, I'm fine. I'm used to it. And some people might be really overwhelmed. But if you've given them the space to name that something is going on for them, now
it's normal.
It's normal.
Yeah.
And it's in the room. And that's it. So that allows the top of the adrenaline spike to be nipped off, to be cut off. I've normalized it. People know it's happening. Now I'm slightly nearer my comfort zone.
And it's another way of training yourself, isn't it? To feel more comfortable in change.
Well, if you think about athletic training, even us going to the gym, not quite the Olympics.
I don't mind branding myself as an athlete, Phil, I have to say.
But what you're doing is all the time you're constantly pushing at the edge. Yeah. You're not going suddenly to lift 70 kilograms. No. You're pushing. I
think I might have taken a couple of steps back this holiday. I don't think Mark, our gym instructor, is going to be happy with my intake of hot cross buns.
I'm not sure cake and Netflix is part of the training. Okay, next one on the list is letting go of the original plan. So that's the big thing in improv, of course. You've got an idea of where this scene is going. I want to tie this in with route versus destination. And I think there's sort of both paradoxes and similarities in both of these. You can still hold your kind of target or your destination. I think part of letting go of the original plan is how you're going to get there. Now, it might look different when you get there, but it would have always looked different. Like, we cannot predict the future exactly. But you can still, I think one of the things to hold on to is we're still going towards growth, or we're still going towards building a digital platform. We're still going there, but the absolute minutiae of how you think you should get there
is going to shift.
Going to shift. So really know the difference between destination and route, that you can hold on to something.
Yeah.
It's just not as fixed as you think it is.
Or hold on to the original plan very lightly.
Absolutely lightly. Yeah. Absolutely, Pam. And actually, another good trick here is you don't have to sit in the not knowing forever and ever. If something changes in a team meeting, one of the skills of improvisers is that they're not then staying, somebody says nylon stockings in the drawer. You're not then standing there in a sort of fog of not knowing. Yeah. Actually, you're very quickly assessing and making a new plan. So in a way, that idea of sitting in the unknown is sort of false, because actually you're constantly updating. It's actually more of a fluid updating.
Well, the other thing I'd say about letting go of the original plan, and also, maybe holding it lightly but focusing on the route, is firstly, what are you focused on? Are you focused purely on whatever that goal or target is, or are you also focused on the people that you're with and how they're feeling? And also what they're learning as you go through that route. So it might mean you need to change the route to learn more. So really focusing on that. And then secondly, if I think about the podcast we did on spiral dynamics, if we think about the difference between orange, which is very sort of strategic, a little bit more short term, really hitting that goal, and yellow, which is disruptive, bigger thinking. Of course, if we are so fixed on holding on to the original plan, we may well miss bigger opportunities. So we're fearful that we won't hit it because we're going to come in lower, but we might have come in higher.
Yeah. Well, and the best improvisers are, of course, a mixture of those two. The best improvisers are right with you in the moment and ready to flex, and they're constantly holding on to the goal and just shifting and shifting and shifting slightly.
What could it be?
What could it be? What could it be? But they're holding it, exactly. Agility as a daily practice, we're going to come to that. So very quickly, instead of asking, it's choosing curiosity over judgment. So asking what if instead of, this shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
What's possible. We're going to come to more of those. Okay, love these. So really practical tools we're going to give you here. Number 1, open your meeting not with how is everyone. So, because we do, don't we?
Silence.
And as we know, that question just gets really complicated the older you get, because you're like, it's a mixed bag over here, to be quite frank.
Well, I had this conversation because I have to say, years ago, we used to often open with word clouds. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with a client yesterday in terms of opening a meeting in a slightly different way. And this client said, you get all the words as a word cloud, and then you're like, and?
Yeah, exactly. And
what do I do?
What do I do with that? So here's an opener for your meeting. Hi everyone. Right. What's changed since we last met?
Ooh.
So what's changed is one of your training tools to normalise, not just normalise, but open
That's
with.
So nice.
Not only do I know things have changed, I hope
they have.
I expect things have
Yes.
changed. Things cannot not have changed.
Yes.
So let's open with
Love that.
So what's changed? Use yes and as a meeting rule. We would say
no
that
buts.
anyway. No buts to ideas. Replace that won't work with what would it take? It's one of my favourites.
Yeah.
And
you've got to get creative.
And even as a practice, for those of you who are sitting here thinking, yeah, but Bob had this idea in the meeting.
It was so stupid.
And I knew it wouldn't work. You know what? You can win-win with this, because even if you absolutely know that's never going to work, you can flush it out with,
say, Bob, this would take a budget of $6 billion and 2 light years.
Or ask Bob. Say, okay, Bob, I'm really hearing that idea that we, relocate to Mars. What would it take? And ask the question, because then you're not on your own with it. Then you can all look at.
You're not blocking.
You're not
you?
blocking. Exactly.
You're going, Bob, great.
Exactly, Bob, great. Okay. Next one. Build in your pivot moment, and what this means.
I'm going to use that one on my kids, by the way.
Yeah. What would it take?
Yeah.
It's so good, isn't it? It's so good. Build in a pivot moment, and what this means is, right bang in the middle of your agenda or conversation, ask this question. Is what we're discussing still the right problem to solve? And even if you think it is, that again is a really good training practice, because you're modelling and training the people in the room to.
It's okay if we turn left here.
It's okay, exactly, to acknowledge we might be at a junction in the road and I'm happy to turn left.
Yeah.
We don't just have to carry on blindfolded and stumbling over rocks. We might have to turn left.
Yeah.
So pivot. Is what we're discussing still the right problem to solve? You need to be asking that at least once a week.
Yeah.
With colleagues every day. Love these. This is such a good one, because it's so obvious. Normalise, I don't know yet.
I like the word yet.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's the word, isn't it? I don't know yet.
Sometimes I feel that in for people if they say something.
Yes, me too.
Like, I can't do that. I can't do it
yet. It's one of the most powerful words.
Yeah, one of my daughters said, I'm not very good at French yet. It's the word.
If you just for a moment, imagine what that's doing to your neural pathways.
Yes.
It's saying, we're going there.
Yeah, and I'm already on the path.
I'm on the path. I'm headed there. So normalise, I don't know yet. So, what's happening with the, that new contract or that new client, or what's happening with our supply chain? I don't know yet.
That's better than I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Honesty is good as well. You get the honesty in there. Okay. Acknowledging that not having all the answers during change is not weakness. Actually, it's really reassuring. I want to be with the person who says, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But
I'm keeping an open mind on
yeah,
that.
exactly. I'm keeping an open mind and we'll find out. Great. Oh, I love this one. Next one. What do you need to feel confident moving forward? Now, if you imagine, are you okay? So you're struggling, Pen, struggling with change. I'm your leader. That's quite, we can
pretend.
Pen's making a face.
We can pretend.
So I could ask Penny, are you okay?
If you're my leader, I'd say,
it's fine. Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's a bit tough, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Or I could say, what do you need to feel confident to move forward?
Ooh,
isn't that good?
Yeah, I like that.
It's so focusing. It's so action orientated.
Yeah.
And even if you say, I don't know, you say, okay, would it be helpful if would it be helpful if we had to talk about that?
Yeah.
Or we found one or two things that would help you feel more confident? Yes, it definitely would. Already I feel better.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, I love this one.
You love all of these.
I love all of these. Narrate your own adaptations. Now, this comes from the military, from like,
yes.
That
you've mentioned this.
Yeah, there was a nice piece of research on this that in moments of very high tension, action within the military, soldiers are trained to verbalize what's happening.
Yes.
So this is a
gives a solidity.
This is for trauma in the moment. You know, if you're wounded, you might talk it through. I'm tourniqueting the arm. You're talking it through because it brings it into the prefrontal cortex and it
out of the emotional
and
self,
it grounds you. So you can narrate your own adaptations by saying, okay, I've just had an email, that deadline's been missed. I'm updating my expectations on this project. And I'm updating my thinking on this and it makes you much, much more flexible in your thinking. And by narrating it out loud, you're really, really solidifying that. And also, I think that's so interesting about this is you're now not the passive person that it's happening to. You're now the one who's the difference.
Like the narrator.
Exactly. You're the narrator. The difference between, oh my God, this change has come in and someone's told me I've got to. The difference between, okay, this has come in. I'm updating my thinking and I'm going to change my decision. And you're in the middle of that.
If I was to make a reflection on this in terms of leadership through change, I would ask myself the question as a leader, am I explicitly speaking enough in the present? So I think very often in change, we can talk about how things were before, the problems we've got. And if we're good, we can also talk about the vision in the future. Are we saying right now, what we are doing is X, Y, Z? Yeah. And I think it serves a number of things, similarly to what you're saying, brings us into the prefrontal cortex, brings us into makes us feel more certain. I also think it can help us understand we are active, we are doing, this is not happening to us.
That's it, 100%.
And I think the present tense, particularly in the English language, actually, I mean, it's certainly in Italian and the French I'm learning, you use the present tense more often than in the English language. And I think it's useful in change.
And it really speaks to that agentic, that
ownership,
that work that we know. Andrew Huberman did this work, didn't he, on activating your nervous system consciously through choice, that agency that you're in the middle of it. We at 4D, one of our favourite phrases is, are you happening to the world or is the world happening to you? Really notice where the change is happening to you and how you can put yourself back in the centre of that narrative, of that story. Lovely. The last one on sort of day-to-day colleagues, day-to-day habits with colleagues is create lessons, not failures. So this goes back to feedback, not failure. And you just ask the question, what are we learning?
This is our neural reframe, isn't it? It's not making things a disaster, failure or impossible. It's what have we learned?
What have we learned? What are we learning here? Exactly. So ask that question. And as the leader, you can put that in. If someone says, this has been terrible, it was a total disaster. Okay, great. What have we learned?
A lot of this is sitting under that possibility mindset, isn't it?
Curiosity,
that growth mindset,
exactly. And then a couple of last ones for you as a leader: celebrate course corrections publicly.
So pleased we've spotted this and changed.
Yeah, and I really want to do a shout out to Bob, who has very quickly adapted and shifted the plan due to, supply chain or whatever it is. I know that was tough, Bob, and I know it meant we lost some revenue there. I really want to thank your flexibility there. So really reward changing in quick change, quick flexibility in thinking. Assumption audits. So I love this. Again, it's a little bit like the question, are we still trying to solve the right problem here? Is what are we assuming that is still true here that we need to pressure test?
It's like that pulling out in a meeting, isn't it? Not getting lost in the agenda.
Yeah.
It's just pulling out and just checking.
Yeah.
Are we focused on the right stuff? What are we assuming here?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that meta level of discussion in meetings gets lost when we're busy through change.
Absolutely. And it does two things. It does the short term and the long term. Because if you can pull out and say, what are we assuming here? You might be assuming that those raw materials are going to be delivered on time. And if you pull out and you challenge that, you're just going to be much more ready. You're going to be much more agile. Model comfort with ambiguity from the top. And, this is, again, a really kind of obvious one. But again, it's naming it. The difference between the leader who, is managing the project and the plan, then going home and saying to his, loved one or her loved one, yeah, it was a really good day. Yeah, I'm really comfortable with change. Tell your team that. Tell your people that. Oh, Penelope's got 11 impressions on LinkedIn. Oh, wow. 11. So name it. Name in the moment when something comes in, when that email or that piece of information comes in and the team is panicked, acknowledge how they feel and say, I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
I'm okay with this sudden change. So let's decide what we're going to do from here. So the more you can name it, it's narrative, isn't it? We've said so many times through this series, if you leave the gap in communication, other people will fill it in with the panic and the fear.
Yeah.
So, create the narrative.
And don't expect all the panic and the fear to disappear. As human beings, we are averse to change for many reasons. I guess what I really love about this episode and those kind of improviser mindset, growth mindset tools that you've given is they are so concrete and tangible in the language piece, which is not always the space at 4D where we spend all of our time. We're very, very interested in our intentional self, in our physical self, in our emotional self. And of course, those parts of us, particularly the emotional and physical, are the pieces that get kind of hijacked through change and uncertainty. And yes, we can do lots of work in terms of regulating our nervous system, checking in with our emotions, changing ourselves physically in terms of our behaviors, which we talk a lot about. What these tools are doing is they are giving us clear, structured language to enter in through that intellectual dimension to create a different intention through change. And absolutely, they could not be more tangible.
Yeah. If you, just for yourself, notice the difference on your own between asking yourself, am I okay? And what one thing is going to help me feel more confident? Notice how it feels for you. That's how it feels for other people.
And I think sometimes if we stick and stop at talking about mindset, which is hugely important, I think sometimes it can be difficult to get a grasp on, okay,
what do I do with that?
Yeah, I want to have a growth mindset. I want to have a possibility mindset. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, this is a really great route in.
Yeah. Good. So good luck with that. Go be agile. We're going to go and be agile and flexible
on a hillock.
On a windy hillock here on Arran. So that was the end of our change.
I know.
Series.
Let's go change into our walking gear, Phil. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 4D Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen.
I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today.
And of course, if you're interested in more from 4D Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in-person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D On-Demand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.